that it's technology married with liberal arts, married with the humanities, that yields us the result that makes our hearts sing.
Imagine a world where the philosophical depths plumbed by Plato and Aristotle were mysteries to us, their works forever obscured in the sands of time. This is a journey not through lands, but through lost chapters of human history, where we weave through the ancient streets of Baghdad and the scholarly halls of Alexandria, exploring the tragic saga of knowledge lost to the ravages of time and human folly. These are the stories of once great libraries, the House of Wisdom and the Library of Alexandria, and the invaluable treasures they held, which slipped through the fingers of civilization due to conquest and neglect. Founded in the early 3rd century BC by Ptolemy I Soter, the Library of Alexandria was intended as a beacon of academic excellence and cultural supremacy. It stood as the world's greatest accumulation of knowledge, possibly containing up to 700,000 scrolls at its peak. In this great literary, the scientific and philosophical works of the ancient world were collected and studied by scholars, granted royal patronage to expand human understanding. The library not only served as a repository, but also as a research institution that attracted scholars from across the Mediterranean and beyond. Here, knowledge was not only preserved but generated, with scholars conducting research, lecturing, and compiling vast works on all subjects known at the time. However, the library's fate was a reflection of Alexandria's own turbulent history. The city, caught frequently in the strife of the Ptolemaic dynasty and later between the Roman Empire and its rivals, saw the library subjected to multiple incidents of violence. The most significant blow came during Julius Caesar's civil war in 48 BC, when Caesar's forces set fire to the ships docked in the harbor, and the fire spread to parts of the city, including the storied library. While the library was not completely destroyed then, it never recovered to its former glory. Over the next several centuries, it declined as political and religious upheavals led to decreased support. By the time of the Muslim conquest in the 7th century, what remained was a shadow of its former self, lacking the patronage and the scholars that had once made it vibrant. The loss of the Library of Alexandria was not just the loss of a building or its contents, but a blow to the very heart of cultural and scientific progress. The flame of knowledge that had burned so brightly, there was gradually extinguished by a combination of war, neglect, and the shifting sands of time. In the 9th century, under the rule of the Abbasid Caliphate, Baghdad emerged as the unparalleled intellectual capital of the world. At its heart was the House of Wisdom, a grand library where the Islamic world's most revered scholars gathered to create, discuss, and store vast amounts of knowledge. This institution was not merely a library, but a thriving center for the translation movement, which preserved and enhanced the ancient wisdom of Greece, Persia, and India. Scholars at the House of Wisdom critiqued, annotated, and expanded upon the works they translated, pushing the boundaries of mathematics, astronomy, philosophy, and medicine. The caliphs supported these endeavors, seeing the pursuit of knowledge as a divine mandate, crucial for the welfare of their empire. They equipped the library with tools that enabled these intellectual pursuits: observatories, a curriculum that attracted scholars from far and wide, and a translation bureau. However, this era of enlightenment was not to endure. As the political stability of the Abbasid Caliphate began to wane, external threats grew stronger. The Mongols, a formidable force under the command of Hulagu Khan, advanced towards Baghdad, driven by a desire to expand their already vast empire. In January 1258, the Mongols besieged Baghdad, a siege that lasted until February, when the city's defenses finally crumbled. The destruction that followed was thorough. The Mongols slaughtered tens of thousands of people, including the last Abbasid caliph, and their fury did not spare the House of Wisdom. It is said that the Tigris River ran black with the ink of countless scrolls and books as they were flung into the water, a poetic yet somber testament to the scale of cultural devastation. The loss was irrecoverable, and the intellectual decline that followed marked the end of the Islamic Golden Age. The world had lost not just a library, but an entire repository of human progress. The fall of great libraries and the obliteration of entire cultures often conjure images of barbarian hordes and devastating fires. But can we really attribute the fallings of these great institutions only to wars and conflicts? What is frequently overlooked is the more insidious foe of knowledge, indifference. Long before the physical destruction of Alexandria's library and Baghdad's House of Wisdom, a creeping neglect had begun to undermine these bastions of learning. Throughout history, many civilizations have witnessed the erosion of their scholarly pursuits not through overt destruction, but through gradual disinterest and neglect. As political and economic priorities shifted, funding and support for intellectual endeavors waned, leading to the decay and eventual loss of invaluable cultural and scholarly resources. This pattern of indifference has repeated across centuries and continents, posing a silent yet persistent threat to the preservation of human knowledge. It reminds us that the greatest danger to our cultural heritage often comes not from without, but from within, as we fail to recognize and protect the value of our intellectual legacies. Indifference to cultural heritage has often proved as destructive as any invading army. History shows us time and again that the decline of a civilization's commitment to its knowledge and cultural artifacts precedes its physical ruin. This pattern of neglect allows the very essence of human progress to slip quietly into oblivion. Take, for example, the lesser-known libraries of the ancient world, whose names have faded from memory through slow, unremarked neglect. As empires crumble and priorities shift, the preservation of knowledge often takes a back seat. In the dark corners of abandoned archives, scrolls disintegrate, and with them, the accumulated wisdom of centuries. This indifference is not confined to the ancient world. Even today, many cultures struggle to maintain their historical sites, manuscripts, and artifacts amidst modern challenges such as economic hardship, political instability, and the ravages of war. The digital era, while presenting new opportunities for preservation, also brings challenges of data decay and the obsolescence of technology, where digital records can become as inaccessible as a papyrus scroll in a flooded basement. By understanding these patterns, we can take proactive steps to ensure that our cultural heritage is not only remembered, but actively maintained. It is not enough to avoid being the destroyers. We must be the preservers, actively engaging in the protection and dissemination of our global cultural legacy. Modern efforts to preserve knowledge have taken on new forms and urgency. Across the globe, institutions and governments are harnessing technology to safeguard cultural heritage. Digitization projects, like those undertaken by the World Digital Library, aim to create accessible permanent records of cultural works that are at risk of decay or destruction. Preservation, however, goes beyond simply maintaining existing knowledge. It involves active education and engagement with the public. Museums, cultural centers, and educational institutions play a crucial role where knowledge is not just stored but shared, discussed, and appreciated. International cooperation has become key in efforts to protect cultural heritage from the threats of war and natural disasters. Initiatives such as UNESCO's World Heritage Sites are examples of how collaboration can lead to the protection of crucial cultural sites. Ultimately, preserving our cultural heritage is an ongoing battle against time, neglect, and ignorance. It requires diligence, resources, and above all, a sustained commitment from communities worldwide. In our quest for preserving art and culture, learn about the Garden of Earthly Delights, a triptych oil painting masterpiece painted by Hieronymus Bosch between 1490 and 1510.